Hi, Stacey. Okay, so this is my third attempt at doing something different. China is making it incredibly difficult to use different multimedia because I'm A, working on an iPad, and B, the VPNs are not letting me do much of anything on sources like Padlet or Notely. They make it really difficult, and the free versions don't let you upload large videos. So here we are, just doing a video to showcase kind of what I've taken away from this module. Gonna get right in and talk about it. The flow model on Teacher Toolkit was my biggest tool that I used kind of in my assessment and discussion, and I found it interesting because it laid it out pretty simply that you need an intense focus on something. The object or the subject content needs to be self-selecting with intermediate challenge, and that you need to be receiving immediate feedback for it. So I had multiple kind of thoughts on this, and from reading what other teachers wrote, it was kind of interesting. First, in terms of my own flow, I definitely have all these things, and so does Mornay, it looks like, because he said that he gets into his flow by reading as well. When I am reading, I get completely lost in a book series. I make sure it's a series because I like it to have a long amount of time that I can be reading it for. And I get lost in the characters, the plot content, the setting and the time period. I am obsessed with the 1700s, like settling America or settling in Scotland as well, and life there. And so I am always trying to read more information about it, and so this series is perfect for that. If I could go back and live in that time, I would. So I just get completely lost in the way of their life and stuff when I'm reading the Outlander books, which is my first, the first kind of book I'll talk about that I get into flow with. Then Francisco talked about getting into flow with hiking, and I do that as well. I will go on hours and hours of hiking and just absolutely love it. Or camping. Oh my gosh, it is my favorite thing in the world, to be out and camping in the middle of nowhere, and just time passes so quickly when I'm gone for just a weekend. When I'm reading, the books I'm reading are self-selecting, so I get to choose them. No one else is choosing them for me or locking me in a room and making me read them. And they present a challenge because I challenge myself to be able to read a certain amount of chapters, or I challenge myself to finish a book or to finish a series. For instance, in like camping and hiking, you're challenging yourself along a route, or you're challenging yourself with limited resources. And back to reading, for the immediate feedback, I'm constantly getting immediate feedback as I'm going through a book, because I'm learning more about the characters, and I'm learning more about the plot, and it's being able to be developed. So that's really cool. And then with camping, in terms of being in the flow and getting immediate feedback, I don't know if that's technically considered in the flow, because the immediate feedback maybe is just like the happy feeling that I'm getting from completing stuff with limited resources. I really enjoy that. So moving on to more of a little bit of a classroom setting for how this stuff works, I found it really useful to look at the Krashen second language acquisition theory, and the I+1. So the I+1 suggests that you have the amount as I that a student already knows and has learned, and that content that they know well. The +1 is that next level up of content you're presenting them with to make like a whole being. So the I+1 is kind of what you're now presenting them as. And I find that I use this in my classroom, that I try to start the lesson that we're doing off with what do we already know? What have we already learned? And the books that I teach with do this as well. We used a Superminds book by Cambridge for our English classes, and I'll just give a quick example. So at the start of the unit, at the start of the year, we did a unit on toys, and the unit starts out with naming 10 toys, usually about 5 or 6 that the kids know, and usually about 5 or 4 that they don't. So like they knew the words train, they knew the words ball and doll, but they didn't know the words computer games or scooter or go-kart. So we had to learn these words, and after we do some activities like talking about these words and kind of getting familiar with our new vocabulary words, we move on to sentence structure. We build up that +1 of I like to play with, insert toy here. And then from there, after we master this unit over a period of usually about 3 weeks, we can move on to another unit that maybe does days of the week, and we'll pull in days of the week with it, which is our new +1, and add it to our I of I like to play with toys. on Wednesdays. So it is able to kind of just build on their previous knowledge, which I find really useful when books can follow that structure. I find that in my classroom, I can also get into a better flow when I am giving immediate feedback to those kids. That if I'm giving them a set of worksheets, which I know isn't project-based or something like just kind of an assessment that we're doing, if I'm giving them immediate feedback, whether it is right in that minute or that same day, they are much more motivated. So for example, if today I gave them a set of worksheets, and as they were completing it, they had to come up and I had to check off before they could move on to the next set of instructions below. And they are very eager to come up and have me check it for them and for them to move on. And the classes tend to go really fast because I'm trying to check a lot, they're trying to get it to me, they're trying to move on and see how much they complete before the end of the period so they don't have to take it home typically. This kind of just makes the class move really quickly. Another way that I experience flow is in our UOI classes when we are doing project-based learning. And the best example I have of this is when we were doing our healthy versus unhealthy unit. My kids were divided into two groups. They were divided into, they were divided into about 5 groups. And of about 6 students each, and they brought in these magazines and we made collages of posters that demonstrated things that were healthy and things that were unhealthy. So we already learned these 2 words and talked about some activities or foods that are healthy or unhealthy, like watching TV, is that healthy or unhealthy? And is swimming healthy or unhealthy? Or are cookies healthy or unhealthy? Versus broccoli, is that unhealthy or healthy? So they already had a base knowledge of this, but then I asked them to open these magazines and to cut out pieces and glue them and to do 2 different columns on a poster that were healthy versus unhealthy. And the self-selecting part of this activity allowed them to select who they were working with. It also allowed them to select who was doing the cutting versus who was doing the gluing versus who was speaking when we were presenting the projects. And they were deciding self-selecting like where these objects were going. I was not telling them. If they asked me, I would ask them a question and try to get them to think about the answer. I was not giving them any answer for this, or I was having them go to their other group mates and ask them for answers. I was not telling them. I wanted them to try to figure out if these things they were putting out were healthy or healthy on their own. So I thought that was a pretty good example of that. That was probably one of the lessons with the most flow of the year, and it took about 40 minutes. One of the last things I want to talk about kind of is the teacher toolkit page, and they talked about happy versus learning. So there are plenty of instances I can think of where my kids are happy to be in class. They might be happy if we get to watch a film that day because we're like making up a lost period or we have an extra period. Or it's a holiday or something like that, or they might be really happy if they get to sing a song, which that I would consider flow as well, but the movie not so much. Or maybe I'm trying to think of like anything else. There was an activity this week that we did that I am very concerned was just more that they were happy doing it rather than learning. We are learning about reduce, reuse, recycle in class, and they have kind of been learning about this, but the Chinese teacher's idea was to have them bring in toys and swap the toys with each other to show how we can reuse toys rather than just throwing them out when we're done with them. And I kind of think the kids understood this. I don't know that they knew that that was the objective. Maybe that's not important. But they brought in these toys, and then we brought them into a room, and we were teaching them the terms, I like your toy, can we swap, yes, no thank you. So they learned these 4 sentences in English that they had to use. Some students used them, some students didn't. I did observe students just going up and being like, here, can we take this? And not using any language with it, which I don't think was good. The students were super happy to do this activity, but I do question the amount of learning that was going on for it. And I think we probably could have found a different activity to do with recycling or using stuff that was better. But when you work in a team, you don't always have the power to say exactly what we're doing because the group votes. So those are some of the ways that I was thinking about flow in our classroom. I was excited to read some of the ways the other teachers do it. Most of the other teachers have older students. Matt was, suggesting some games and stuff that they do, and, it was, Francisco made it a point that it is easier to get into the flow, he thinks, in English classes, which I find UOI classes, unit of inquiry classes, super easy to get into flow because I can get the kids to work together in groups. The project-based learning that the Edutopia article suggested, really like the project-based learning, I completely agree with, is the easiest way to get my kids to experience flow. So thanks so much for letting me do a video. I appreciate it. I'm happy that I didn't have to type everything out again. I really tried to use Padlet, but thanks so much, Stacy. Bye-bye.